Hi guys, it's Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today's video is going to be my very first wrap up. I want to share with you guys the books that I read in the month of January, and of course as a new year I'm starting a new reading A to Z challenge and the 52 book club prompts. The 52 book club is a book club on Facebook where you try to read 52 prompts, one for each week of, like, there's 52 because they're trying to make you read 52 books a year, one book a week for the year. I typically read more than just the 52 books every year, so my goal is to complete all the prompts regardless of like how many prompts. You're not supposed to double dip on the prompts, but like I said, I read more than 52 books, so it's okay I feel like it's okay for me to double dip on the prompts for the books. So let's just get started. These books are not in the order in which I read them throughout the year. I'm gonna start in alphabetical order, let you know which prompts they fit in the 52 book club prompt, and if they don't fit either a letter or the prompt, then those will be for last. So of course I'm going to start, like I said, in alphabetical order, and the first letter is for the letter A, and I read American Dirt by Janine Cummins. I was a little hesitant on reading this book because I had heard a lot of hype about this book, but also I had heard a lot of like negative things towards this book just because it's being told from a non-person of color standpoint, and people thought that was, like, people get offended for everything, you guys know that, but some people thought that she wasn't the correct person to tell this particular story. In this book we follow our main character, who is a lady who is fleeing with her son from southern Mexico. She's trying to cross all of Mexico into the United States. She's running away from the drug cartels, because they have killed 16 of her family members. So we follow her deciding to pick up her son and take off, and along the way she meets all these other people who are trying to make the same journey as her. We follow the struggles, we follow all the pain that she suffers, we follow all the sacrifices really that she did in order to be free and safe from these people who are trying to continue killing her family. And I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good story. It was really, like, heartbreaking, and I didn't see anything wrong with the author telling the story, even though it's not her story to tell. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great story to read. Definitely, as living in a border city, we hear about people being caught and tragic things happening to these people who are trying to cross the border into the United States. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's a good book. I think it's a good book for people to read, and I highly recommend it. This did fit some prompts for the 52 book prompt, and I wrote them down here in the back. This fit prompt number 15, a 5-syllable title, American Dirt, so that's 5. And then a book you've seen somewhere reading. I've seen everybody read this everywhere, so that was an easy one. Then prompt number 24 addresses a specific topic, and for that specific topic I picked immigration. I think this is a very good book that deals with that topic. Then prompt number 27 includes a map. There is a map here. In the cover of the book, it tells you kind of where they start and then how they come to the United States. And then prompt number 50, let me flip the page here. A person of color as the main character. So we have our Mexican characters. What is the lady's name? I forget. Her name is Lydia. That was her name. So that's it for American Dirt. For the letter B, I read The Book of Two Ways by Jodi Picoult. It's been a long time, maybe a couple of years since I've read anything from Jodi Picoult, and I decided to pick this up. I think this is her latest book, and of course that's the letter B for The Book of Two Ways. And for this book we follow, I don't know if to call this a historical fiction book, because it's seated in historical, like, artifacts, I guess you can call it. We follow this our main character. What is her name? I always forget people's names. Dawn. She survives a plane crash, and for some reason when they're trying to, like, book her a flight back to where she needs to go, she decides she tells them that she needs a ticket to Egypt. And so she decides to go to Egypt and look for her long lost love and see what her life would have been like if she hadn't given up her dream of becoming an archaeologist in her current present life. So it's kind of like a dual timeline, but it's not like many years apart. Eventually the two timelines meet in the middle. Like I was saying, her dream was to be an archaeologist. As life has it, with its weird turns and ways, she ends up being a death doula, who is basically a person who eases the passing of a person onto death. And she became interested in this particular field because when she was, doing the archaeology stuff, there is an actual book, an Egyptian book or artifact or whatever. It's called the Book of Two Ways, in which there's history about how the Egyptians used to believe something about like death and what would happen when they passed on onto the next life. It's hard to explain, but it deals with death. So yeah, like I said, we follow Dawn as she is making her way to Egypt, reconnecting with her long lost love, and then we kind of take flashbacks as to how her life is with her daughter and her current husband and her client who is actively dying. And so we go back and forth between her normal life and the life that she's kind of wishing she would have had. This book it kind of hit me in a personal level, just because my Lexi, you guys know Lexi, she got sick, and so I was kind of like reading this book while we were going through all her tests, and she might have cancer and like all these things. So like the possibility of her dying was really, really real at that time when I was reading this. I mean, she's not 100% out of the woods, but I think she's doing a lot better. But when I was extra emotional while I was reading this book about death and dying while going through this thing with her. But anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I don't know if what I was going through personally affected the enjoyment level on this one. This book is not, super romantic. It's not very action-packed. It's not super suspenseful with a bunch of twists and turns. It's just kind of like a slow burn, but it's a good slow burn. It keeps you interested in what is happening. Something happens in this book that actually made me gasp out loud. So I highly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend another hit from Jodi Picoult. For the letter C is the last book that I actually read this month, and I read The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. This book is, I think I've read all of her books. I think it's her third or fourth book, I think. She's kind of like a YA mystery thriller author, and this one was quite enjoyable. It wasn't as scary, as suspenseful as like other books that I have read, but it was suspenseful and interesting enough that I wanted to keep reading it. In this book, we follow three cousins whose parents 25 years ago, like before they were born, they were cut off from their family. Their mom was like, I want nothing to do with you guys. And then randomly one day, the grandkids of the lady now, 20 some years later, they get a letter inviting them to their family island where their parents used to spend all their days, and the grandma's trying to reconnect with them. And as we follow these kids making their way to the island, we kind of investigate what happened 25 years ago that made their parents be cut off from this family line, I guess you can say. It was a fine book. Like I said, it was suspenseful enough to keep me interested, but it's not like I felt it was scary or too thrilling. The ending wasn't quite as satisfying as the other books that I've read from her, but I still highly enjoyed it. This did fit one prompt, and it's for the prompt number 8, including the art world. There is a small storyline here where they are selling family art pieces. So that's the tiniest little bit of the art world that this book dives into, but I'm counting it. The next 3 books that I'm going to share with you guys is a series. It's called the Central Park Pact series, and it's 3 books. The first one is Passion on Park Avenue. The second one is Love on Lexington Avenue, and the last one is Marriage on Madison Avenue. So in these three books, we follow three different characters, but they're all connected through one life event. So I'm going to start with the very first book. This is where I can kind of get out of order. The very first book in the series is Passion on Park Avenue. And like I said, these three books follow three different women. The thing that unifies the women is they meet at the beginning of the book. We see kind of the same opening story, but told through each different woman. But basically, they were dating the same man, basically. So we have the wife of the man, we have the mistress of the man, and the other lady was the girlfriend. So this guy was dating all of them at the same time, and they found out about each other at his funeral. So that's how kind of they're all connected. And in this book, we follow Naomi. She is the mistress in the triangle here. And we follow, she is a very successful person who moves into this apartment. I guess when you're up over there in New York, you have to apply to live in these fancy apartments, and then you go and you interview with the people in charge of the apartment. I don't know, it gives me some vibes like that. But this girl, her mom, growing up, she was very poor, and her mom used to be the lady that cleaned the apartments that she's applying to live in now. So she kind of like, it's kind of like a rags to riches story, and she wants to live in this particular building because there was this one person who was particularly mean to her mom, and so she wants to kind of live there and kind of out of revenge for this person. But then when she moves into the house, into the apartment, finally, she realizes that this person has Alzheimer's, and they're kind of deteriorating, and she's kind of like feeling bad because she moved in with a purpose to make their life miserable, basically. And now she kind of feels bad. Of course, this man that was horrible to her mom has a son, and the son is a little bit good looking, and things happen from there on. And the love in this kind of felt a little insta-lovey. I didn't really buy it, so I have my notes back here. I didn't really buy it, and it was a solid start to the series. Definitely not my favorite book in the series. This one, I almost forgot, met 3 prompts for the 52 book club. First, for prompt number 23, author with X, Y, or Z on their last name, and we have Lauren Lane. There's a Y in her last name. Then an author's photo on the back cover. That's her photo right there. And then the last one was an illustrated people on the cover, and you see all the books have a girl illustrated in the front cover. So I was glad that met 3 prompts. The next one is Love on Lexington Avenue. This is the second one. And in this book, we follow the wife's storyline. After her husband's death, she, of course, inherits the apartment that they're living in. And she wants to kind of redo the whole apartment just because she feels betrayed by her husband, and everything in the apartment reminds her of her. Like the aesthetic of the apartment reminds her of her husband. So she decides to hire this contractor to just completely remodel the apartment and just make sure that there's no like traces of him in the apartment. Of course, she ends up falling in love with the contractor. There's some drama going on. This was my favorite book in the series. I felt like this was more realistic as opposed to the other 2. If you had to read just one, this is the one that I would recommend. This met the prompt for a wealthy character. So we follow the wife here. She inherits all this money. Like, they're all rich people, but specifically her, because she inherits all this money from her husband. And they were already wealthy. She just became wealthier. And the last book in this series is Marriage on Madison Avenue. In this book, we follow the girlfriend of the 3 ladies. And she's kind of like the one that took this whole, betrayal from this man's part the hardest, just because she kind of was hoping that he was the real deal. And now she has to go into a family event, being single, and just kind of like, you know how you feel when you go to a family event. Everybody's going to ask you like, when are you going to get married? Who are you dating? And of course, she's going to have no one. So she decides to get her best friend to pretend that he is her boyfriend. And of course, they end up falling in love. This book, was probably my least favorite out of all of them, just because I found the characters very annoying. They kept going back and forth on, like, yes, we love each other for real, and then the tiniest little miscommunication would happen and they were like, no, we're just pretending, this isn't real. And then they would go back to, no, this, it is real for real, like, we really do love each other. And then they would go back again to, no, we're just pretending, this is just a business transaction type thing. So that going back and forth on, yes, we love each other, no, we don't love each other, like, I found that really, really annoying. So yeah, definitely my least favorite of the three, but overall I enjoyed the series altogether. Technically, that would have worked for letter M because it's called Marriage on Madison Avenue, but for M, I went with Mallory. This was the first book I read in 2022, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But Mallory is the second book in the Bird Box duology. I don't think it's a series, but it is by Josh Malerman. And in this book, we follow the events from the first book. It's about 10 years after the events, and after being saved, you guys haven't seen Bird Box, they find a safe place where Mallory can live with her kids. And it's been about 10 years, and she starts hearing that there were actually survivors. People figured out how to live out there with these type of alien invasion wasn't happening, and she hears that her parents might be alive. So even though Mallory is terrified of leaving this safe sanctuary where she's been raising her kids, she decides to just go for it and step out of the safety of this place and go in search for her parents to see if they're actually alive. She takes the journey there with her, she does take her journey there with her two kids who are now teenagers, and she faces a lot of struggles because, you know, they're at that teenage stage where they question everything. They don't like to be told what to do, and Mallory is terrified because the kids kind of want to do their own. They don't want to be blindfolded, and she kind of has to deal with the fact that, you know, could we really be safe in leaving here and finding my family? So I felt like this book was not necessary. I wish they kind of hadn't told this story, because I think Bird Box is a great story itself. I don't think it needed an extra like storyline to be told, but I mean, it was fine. For the letter R, I read The Return by Nicholas Sparks. This book is probably my least favorite Nicholas Sparks book I've ever read. It didn't feel like a Nicholas Sparks book. I didn't care for the characters. In this book, basically we follow this retired Navy doctor, I think, orthopedic doctor, who moves into this little town in the South. I think it's somewhere in North Carolina. That's where usually all his books are set. But because his father died, he kind of goes to the cabin to kind of clean things up and, you know, make order of things. Because nobody knew that he was in town, the sheriff goes to the little cabin where he's at and kind of questions him as to what he's doing. Of course, the sheriff deputy person is a lady, and they fall in love. Like, the romance in this book came out of nowhere. Like, before I knew it, they were telling each other they loved each other, and I was like, what? Where did this come from? so that's that. There's also a secondary storyline in where there's this runaway teenager who has been living in his dad's little cabin while it's been abandoned, and I kind of enjoyed that secondary storyline more than the actual storyline. Nicholas Sparks books always does this thing where there's two storylines, like they seem completely opposite, but then somewhere along the end they meet. And like I said, I enjoyed the secondary storyline better than the first one. I don't recommend this book, unfortunately. And the last prompt that I completed for the 52 book club was for the prompt that says chapters have titles. And for that, I read The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. And like it says, the chapters have titles instead of like chapter 1, 2, or 3. This book was okay. We follow our main character, Hannah, and she's trying to piece together her husband's disappearance. He just like picked up and disappeared one day. He leaves her a note saying to take care of his daughter. His daughter is not her daughter. Like they've only been married for a couple of years, and the daughter's already a teenager. But as she's trying to find out, you know, what is he talking about, protect my daughter, she kind of starts diving into her husband, and she starts finding out a lot of things that she didn't know about her husband, a lot of things that he did, people that he was involved with. And so we start, it's a mystery, so we start putting pieces together of the puzzle. I enjoyed this book, but it's not the best. It's a New York Times bestseller here, but I didn't enjoy it that much. It started out very intriguing and I was very invested, but towards the end I felt like it lost its like oomph. I don't know, like I just didn't find the ending very satisfying or gratifying at the end, and it left me wanting more from the story. It's a pretty short book, so maybe if it had been a little bit longer, we had more time to develop the world and the storyline, I would have enjoyed it a little bit better, but I think I only gave this like 3.5 stars. And for my A to C, I always include a number, like A to C and then a number. And for the number part, I read 10 Things I Hate About Pinkie by Sandia Menon. This is the 4th book. I've read all her 3 other books and I really enjoy them. They're cutesy YA books. And in this book, we follow Pinkie, who is a rebellious Indian child to conservative Indian parents. And she's always getting in trouble. She's kind of like the black sheep of the family, while her cousin is like the perfect golden child. So she's always trying to compare herself to her cousin. And so something happens where they automatically blame Pinkie for what happens. And in order to Pinkie prove that she has matured and she is more responsible, she decides to get a fake girlfriend that her mother would love. Apparently, all her previous boyfriends have been like punkers, rockers, like they don't go to school, they have nothing, they don't work, they're just kind of like bums. And so her mom is expecting her boyfriend to be like another bum that she doesn't like, but she ends up getting this guy that she knows from another friend who is like a super nerd who's looking into getting a internship at a law firm before going to college. And so he sounds like the perfect boyfriend that her mom would want her to have. So she convinces him to pretend to be her boyfriend to prove to her mom that, you know, she's not as a bad teenager as her mom thinks she is. And of course, while pretending to be a couple, they end up falling for each other. And it's a really cute story. And yeah, Sandia Menon knows how to do a good YA story without being too cheesy or corny. It was super cute and super lighthearted, and I highly recommend. So those are all the books that I read, guys, for the month of January. I know that was a lot. I hope you guys don't mind the super long video. But that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want, you can look at the description box below so you guys can see which prompts are left in the 52 book prompt book club. And so you guys can see what other prompts I'll be working on throughout the rest of the year. But for now, that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.